Okay everyone, we're going to do a video today on the single arm dumbbell row. I opened a couple windows to kill the echo in here. I look like the guy from 2010 when Dave Bowman comes back and he's like, I know Dave Bowman, tell him something wonderful. Whatever, half of you have no idea. I've already lost half of you on the video. So here's the point. I'm doing a video on single arm dumbbell row, and to kind of keep me under control, I made some notes. I went and looked at a bunch of other people's single arm dumbbell row videos. I saw some things I liked, I saw some things I didn't like. And I'm just going to comment on them and add them in as we go along, and I'll work off these notes that I have. So the first guy I watched in this exercise, the single arm dumbbell row, is some guy in this thing called Howcast. And it seems apparent with all these videos that you be shirtless. I don't know why. I don't know how seeing my nipples is going to help you understand the exercise better. Maybe it's like an exercise porn thing, right? In that case, I'll put the montages from Rocky 3 and 4 in the show notes. It's much better than looking at Stallone on roids is much better than looking at me shirtless doing exercise. I'm going to teach you how to do a single arm dumbbell row, not entertain you in other ways. So, but apparently in all these videos, it's like all these guys are working out with their shirts off. Again, not going to happen. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, they all get wacko about the leg position on this. Let me demonstrate the exercise for a second here. So this is the single arm dumbbell row. Just like this. Right there. This is also the single arm dumbbell row. Right? So what they're getting all wacko about is your leg position. You'll see this in one of the later videos I comment on. And the one guy is nuts about how you have to have the leg right underneath you to give you balance and stability. And the other guy is wacko about how you have to have the leg all the way out here so you get the dumbbell into your hip to properly work your lat. Look, I know people struggle with this idea, but it really is about context. If you're doing this exercise primarily to work the lats in this position here, then you're going to need to have your leg out to the side. Why? Well, it's kind of like in crazy people when Caucasians were too tall to work on technology. If your leg is here and you try to pull the weight back into your hip to bias these fibers of your lats, you're going to smash into your damn leg, right? So by having your leg out here and out of the way, you can still keep your back straight. You can almost use like Bob McDonald's as like a pendulum motion and pull the weight more to your hip to bias the fibers more down here in your lat. If, however, you're trying to get more mid-back, then actually having your leg in a little bit is going to help. It's going to give you better balance. So if my elbow is out to the side here slightly, it really doesn't matter where my leg is. It's not going to make a damn bit of difference. So as far as you're getting all nutso about leg position, again, it's about the context of what you're trying to do. People always say, well, Shank, which is the better variation? I'll tell you which is the better variation. The one that you can do consistently enough to get better at the skill of the exercise so you get something out of it. Remember, all exercises have 3 purposes. You have to work the targeted muscle, you have to not injure yourself, and you have to be able to progressively overload the exercise over time. Most importantly is pick one of the 2 and get good at that. And then when you get really good at that, you can try the other variation. Now look, if you're some juiced up bodybuilder and you went on stage at the Mr. Juiced Up Bodybuilder show and the judges said, you know, Shank, your lats are incredible, but your mid-back is lagging, then that may be a reason why you only do your rows with your elbows slightly out and your leg tucked in. But for the average fitness person, whether your leg is back and you're pulling the weight to the hip, whether your leg is in and you're pulling the weight a little closer to your torso, they're both going to make you build a little muscle, make you functionally independent for as long as possible, and make you harder to kill. Again, not today, Satan, as CHB would say. So they both, a lot of you got nutso about that, and it's really nothing to get nutso about. Pick one of the positions, pick the one you're most comfortable with doing, especially if you're first starting out doing this exercise, and get really good at it, and then worry about the other variations. The one guy did talk about how you shouldn't use a ton of body momentum. This is the Howcast guy. So when you're doing the row, he was very adamant about the fact that it shouldn't look like this, right? Which is kind of a problem because you'll watch other videos of like really heavy-duty, hardcore, big, beefy, you know, my back looks like pepperoni pizza because I'm on so many steroid bodybuilders, and they're doing that. Look, those type of momentum and cheating, they call them cheating techniques, they're used by very advanced lifters for a purpose. They're trying to develop the muscle through a specific range of motion, and unfortunately the weight they have to use for that motion is so heavy they can't get the weight started. So they use a little bit of starting momentum to get it through that sticking point so they can overload the muscle where they need to overload it. For you, it's completely irrelevant. The guy on Howcast, as much as I'm making fun of his shirt position and the leg zealotry, is exactly right. When you're doing the row, you shouldn't be bouncing and popping. And you're not an advanced level bodybuilder. Right? The only thing that will happen when you use that tactic is you'll get less tension out of the exercise. You're simply not trained to do that. There's no need to do it. And again, if your goal is to build a little muscle, if your goal is to stay functionally independent as long as possible, if your goal is to be harder to kill, it's just not a necessity. In fact, it'll only take away from that. What else? Oh, one thing I did like you talk about, don't use your wrist as a hook. So when you watch people do this exercise, they'll put their knee on the bench, hand on the bench, and they'll row, and you'll see their wrist starts to do kind of this motion. Now look, in my experience, people do that wrist motion, that leader of the pack, that Judas Priest turbo lover kind of thing. They only do it either because they completely maxed out their shoulder blade as they pulled in, but they continue to keep pulling, and since there's no more motion in their shoulder, they bend their wrist, or they're bad at the first rule of exercise, which is to make sure the exercise you're doing is working the targeted muscle. So if you're using your wrist bend like this, you're doing mainly forearm, not back, right? Because the back doesn't connect here. This is the forearm and to a degree the arm. So you don't want to do that. He's absolutely correct, because you don't want to make a back exercise an arm exercise. Unless you're some kind of like crazy-ass Sylvester Stallone, always greasy and over-the-top arm wrestler, then maybe there might be some specificity to that. But I don't train anybody like that, so move on with your life. So yeah, just watch the wrist bend. Also, if you're lifting too much weight relative to your ability to use your back and not your arms, because that's one of the things that could screw up rule number one, is if you lift too much weight, your body's just trying to survive. It's not trying to work the correct muscle, the targeted muscle. So watch out for that bent wrist position. It really doesn't do you any good. So the next video I found was by this gentleman named Scott Herman. And he's certainly not Pee-wee. He's a really well-built guy, how I know, again, because there's nipples everywhere. He's very simple. This video by like 4 million views, probably 4 million more now I get. But he was very specific about all the little details of the exercise. You know, about the leg position here and the hand position here. And you want to start the weight down here, get the full stretch, and pull it right here to the hip. I mean, his instruction was very basic and very simple and kind of got the point across. It was only 2 minutes long, which is why probably a lot of people watch his video versus mine, which is 40 minutes long on just not flexing your wrist. I mean, the one thing I got a little upset about, he talked about motorcycle wrist too, turbo lover wrist, is this whole head position thing. Look, this was a big thing about like 10, 15 years ago before everyone realized that it was pointless. And a couple trainers came out and said, when you're in the row, that like basically doing this was like throwing a bag of kittens into the ocean. Like it was the worst possible thing you could do, and it was so bad for your neck. And then a bunch of people like me came out and said, nah, I don't think so. Some people feel a little more comfortable with their head up a little bit or down a little bit. And then it got turned into, well, I can't scare the crap out of people into listening to me that way. So let me just say it reduces neural drive to the targeted muscle, thereby violating rule number one, that lat exercise should work lat. Problem is that didn't seem to work very well either. So when it comes to your neck position, you don't want to look like the damn girl from The Exorcist. You want to be like, ah, and have your head turning all over the place. You certainly don't want to have your head in positions that are going to hurt your neck. But really, your goal is to focus here on the lat. And if the amount of load through the neck is not that high, and it's not causing you pain, and it helps you focus and concentrate on the exercise more, this whole neck position thing that these guys seem to like this hill they want to die on, in my experience, it hasn't made a goddamn bit of difference for anybody. So as far as neck position when you're rowing, I tend to be more comfortable with my neck slightly cocked up like this. But that's not everybody. So just find a neck position that you're comfortable in. By the time you've gotten to a single arm dumbbell row, you should already know the answer to this question because you've probably been doing machine style rows for a little while, which is a very good precursor to this move. This move is actually pretty darn advanced, right? You have to stabilize your body while doing the row, or on the machine you don't have to worry about that. So at that point, you should really have already figured out, well, sometimes my neck's a little more comfortable up, sometimes my neck's a little more comfortable down. There's so many variations in people's structures and past injuries that to come here and say that something like, well, the next pack, you're going to create more greater neural drive and less injury. that to me always came across as more of someone trying to find a niche for themselves than anything else, or someone that was working with a specific population where that was true. But as far as individuals are, it's really not that big of a deal. Again, Scott Herman, his video was short compared to me. He smiles a lot compared to me. He's young, he looks good compared to me. But yeah, it was okay. The next video was by a guy, and I'll put all links, all these in the show notes. It was a guy named Athlean X. His name is Jeff Cavaliere, which was kind of ironic because he seemed like a very serious guy, and his name is Cavaliere. That was funny to me. Sorry, Jeff. I'm making a little joke. Take it easy. I'm an intense guy myself. I got to lighten the mood up a little bit. He was another guy who's going crazy about this leg position. That if your leg wasn't swept out to the side like this, right? Like it was like dividing by zero. The end of the world was going to come. Again, there is no right or wrong way to do this exercise. Well, it's a right or wrong way. But as far as leg position is, it's all about, again, what your goal is. And if you're trying to work the lats, you're going to need to get the leg out of the way to work what Lyle McDonald talks about, that pendulum motion, right? Whereas if you're doing with the elbow out, the leg is probably better off here to give you a little more stability. So again, his video was correct in terms of if you're trying to primarily bias the lat, yeah, get that leg back out of the way. Oh, what else did he say? He talked a lot. I thought this was really good. He talked a lot about the position of your thoracic spine. So if you don't realize this, your spine has 3 major subdivisions. Yes, I know you have a sacrum bit, right? You have cervical, you have 7 cervical vertebrae, you have 12 what are known as thoracic vertebrae, and you have 5 what are known as lumbar vertebrae. In this exercise, if you're trying to fully contract the lats in this position, it's very hard to do that with your back round. You just saw what happened to my arm. So look, my elbow position is here when my back is extended. Look what happens to my elbow position when my back is not extended. My arm automatically goes forward. I can't get through that full range of motion. This is neither good nor bad. It depends on what part of the back you're trying to bias. Right? So you'll see old photos of Arnold and Franco and a lot of the bodybuilders. And when they're doing their single arm cable rows, they have a little bit of a round in their upper back. Again, it's because they're trying to bias the lat that way. Now, what I think was left on the table, and I think Jeff Cavaliere's point would have been much better emphasized, is people who work in modern workplace environments, they're not Arnold and Franco. They're not trying to bias certain lat fibers. So when they row, they really shouldn't have a rounded upper back. In fact, anything in the gym that can get them to create a little more extension through their upper back and stability through their lower back is going to benefit them from a health standpoint. And to that point, I agree with the guy completely. So what you'll see is a lot of people when they row, usually either because it's bad posture, it's bad habit, or they're just not aware of it, or they're lifting too much weight, they'll have this like Quasimodo thing going on, and they just simply can't get the back, the arm to drive all the way up. Now the question is, what the hell do you do about that? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to get conscious of the back position. Know that for the average everyday person who works on the desk, you don't want to be here when you do your rows. The other thing is you want to do drills that help you work on that. If you spend 8 to 10 hours a day or more driving and doing this all day, me coming up with suggestions is not going to help you. So one of the best exercises I've ever seen, I talked about in the douchebag video about the thoracic rotation, but one of the best exercises I've ever seen is when you get in this quad position. You don't do it on the bench just so you can see it. And you bring your elbow behind your head like this, and you rotate your elbow between this gap here between your hand and your knee. Keeping your abs tight, you're going to rotate and extend and open up that upper back. Now the problem is, again, a single arm dumbbell row, if you're not limited by equipment, I realize some people don't have access to a machine, it really is a more advanced movement. So if you don't have good thoracic rotation yet, I really don't understand why you're on this exercise to begin with. You should be on a machine row or a band row, and twice a day for 6 to 10, 2 sets of 6 to 10 reps, you should be doing this exercise to help increase the ability to rotate your upper back. Now, not only because it helps you do the exercise through a full range of motion, it also helps offset a lot of the neurological programming of being rotated and bent over like this all day long. And again, that's just doing 2 sets of 6 to 10 reps. More reps than that, my friend, is not made a damn bit of difference for anyone. Doing that for 2 sets twice a day. If you do that for a month, you'll probably build, in my experience, enough it's not even structural, it's just body awareness of this position to be able to do any exercise you want in that position and have better overall posture throughout the day. So he made a big deal about that. I think his emphasis, I don't think he made enough emphasis where it benefits most of my clients, which again, this is more of an awareness exercise versus not working your back. Because again, you can work the lats through both a rounded and an extended position, but the extended position brings a lot of my clients so much more of a benefit. He too talked about something I thought was really important, was this idea of getting a good stretch at the bottom. Lionel Donald tipped on this too when he was doing a video, I think he was on the road, was when you watch the really big hardcore bodybuilder guys, look, I know people rip on them because they're ridiculous, but they know a thing or two about building lats. And when you watch them when they do this exercise, they'll come up and they'll do their row. And you'll watch them, they bring the arm all the way down, but then they go a little bit lower to get that lat through a full range of motion. Now, there's something very important that they're doing here that they're not remarking on, probably because they do it more by feel than by functional anatomy. When you watch them do this, when you get that full range at the bottom, they're keeping their abdominals very, very tight. A lot of them wear a belt to help out with this. And all the rotation is coming through that middle back. Right? So they're getting that lat muscle to move an extra 2 or 3 inches when they pull. So you'll see them, they come down, and where most people just stop the arm there, they batten down the abs and just get that extra little rotation through that upper back. Why? Because it helps you do more work through a greater range of motion, therefore by making the exercise more effective. If you're a beginner and you're not comfortable with that yet, stay with the shorter, choppier range, and then as you get more comfortable, just start experimenting with, can I rotate more through my chest without compensating at my lower back? I have clients do this all the time. I have them do a single arm dumbbell row. They'll only go through this range here, and then when I feel confident in their ability to do that exercise, I'll have them stop, tighten up the abs extra, and then see if they can just get a little bit more rotation through that upper back to work those lats through a slightly greater range of motion. So he made a point of that, and one of the things that Lionel Donald makes a point of in a lot of the pushing things, but I think has to be said about pulling exercises, it's very hard to impinge your shoulder on a pulling exercise, but if there's one way you're going to do it, it's when you get to the bottom of that row, if you keep letting the arm going forward, yes, it's natural for a little bit of elevation to occur, but you'll see people that get sloppy. And so as they try to get that little extra range like the hardcore bodybuilder does, you'll see their shoulder really elevate as they, what's called abduct their scapula or their shoulder blade. And so what happens is they wind up finding a way to get impingement on a lat exercise. So just be a little different. Yes, I get it. As that arm comes out and you're trying to get that rotation through the chest to get those lats through an extra range of motion, there's going to be a little bit of elevation. Just don't get like that and start pinching off on your shoulder. So I have seen clients get provoked into pain by doing that. All right, so that's the athlete at Sky. Again, I talked about, Lionel Donald talks about if you're trying to use this exercise for lats, it's going to have more of a scooping motion. Let me just demonstrate that, because that's pretty important. It's going to have more of a scooping motion, scoop the loop right there, right? Whereas it's more of a mid-back motion. You're going to have the elbow out a little bit, and you're not going to have that swinging, swaying motion. Again, it's not swinging, swaying in momentum. It's just, it's a swoop. It's not a swing, it's a swoop. Let's see, so that takes care of that. There's a gentleman named Bolic. I apologize, dude. Look, my name's Mike Cruikshank, dude. If I'm saying your name wrong, I feel you. All right. He just talked about, in this video had like 4 million or 3 million views, about how you just got to be careful to not turn your torso as you pull. Again, I believe, if I remember his video correctly, he does put this in the proper context, but do understand it is an advantage on this exercise that as you come down, if you rotate your torso, it does work your lats for a slightly more range of motion. I think what he was talking about was coming all the way down, just twisting your low back and losing tension on the lift. The other thing in the video he shows, and I thought this was really important, and he pointed this out, is that when you row, you don't want to bring the elbow all the way up. Yes, it helps you rotate the torso, which lets you get your lats to a slightly larger range of motion. If those are the fibers you're trying to bias, and if you're trying to improve your posture, or at least your awareness of your posture, the problem is, at a certain point, you begin to turn this somewhat into a momentum game, and then all of a sudden the tension on the exercise is not going into the muscle you want to go into. But the other issue is that that elbow drives too high. And at a certain point, you see this on the machine, you see this a lot. At a certain point, the lats stop working. So right around there, my shoulder blade is fully adducted or into my body. And any more range of motion than that is not going to come from lat. And then you'll start seeing turbo lever wrist, right? Leader of the pack, right? Or you'll start to see the shoulder start to elevate. And you can get a little bit of a pinching or impingement in the shoulder in that position. What also happens is you start working more of the traps, not really the rear delts because the fibers there align more here, but you'll start getting more traps. And mainly what you're kind of doing is you're jujitsuing yourself. You're kind of irritating the tendons of the bicep as they come down. So his point is well taken. Don't turn it into some crazy momentum movement, and don't take a good thing like trying to extend the range of motion a little at the bottom, or making sure that elbow gets all the way back, right? Because this isn't a maximum use of lats, this is. Don't take it too far and start to lose what we call that active range, that tension on the back. Last but not least was the men's health guys. Now this video, they had some good points, but my God, they were like, you should never do a row. Maybe I'm getting wrong, men's health guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear I remember the two of you, at least one of the guys who talked. He's like, never do it on a bench like this. Your body will get in all these weird positions. Look, there's a reason why you kneel on a bench is it gives you more stability, it gives you more support, so you can handle heavier loads, so therefore you can follow rule number 3, which is you must progressively overload the muscle over time. Now what they got all excited about was the idea that you should only do your rows on, you can see this in the screen, but with your legs back in a tripod like this, right? So that was their suggestion. This would correct everything. Farts wouldn't smell anymore, everything would work out perfectly in life. The problem is that's not a better variation. If you have someone who can't get in proper position on the row, either they have poor body control or they're too short or too small to get their foot all the way to the floor. If you want to do single arm dumbbell rows and you want to emphasize the amount of load you lift, then all you have to do is put a block or a plate or Reebok step under their foot so they can line up better. You can also do what a lot of the hardcore bodybuilder guys do, is they'll do this exercise at a bench and they'll put 1 foot forward and 1 foot back, usually because they're hardcore, they have to have a hand on the dumbbell rack. And usually they have like a 100-pound dumbbell or a 150-pound dumbbell with another dumbbell on top of it. Right? They're really hardcore. They go learn how to weld and start welding weights on there. Right? But they'll do it here with the leg underneath. And why do they do it with the leg underneath? Because it gives them more stability, it gives them more support, just like putting your knee on the bench will. Right? Probably too, if they did it on the bench, there's so much weight, they'd probably fall over like Fred Flintstone's car with that big stake on it. But yeah, so just, you can do it this way, and that'll let you handle more load. Or on the bench. This is by far no means the right way to do it. If you're not doing it well here, there probably something has to be worked on with your technique, something has to be worked on relative to your height to the bench. All this does, this position here, is work your core more. That's it. Your core becomes more of a limiting factor because you have less support. I mean, at that point, you might as well take a damn stability ball. You know, if you're one of these core fetish people, I love core fetish people. I got my own issues, right? So why not core and kneel on the ball and do something like this, right? If you're really going to be that core crazy. Again, with exercise, there is no better or worse. There's always trade-offs. You start doing more of this, or your hand goes on the ball, you can always do this, or your hand's on the ball, and you can do a row like that. It's all about trade-offs. The less parts of your body that are on this bench, the more you get into that V position, or you kneel on the ball or hand on the ball, the ability of you to lift heavier and heavier loads is going to be curtailed. Which again, maybe that's your goal, I don't know. But it's by no means better or worse. So if you see someone showing you a dumbbell row variation, and they say it's better, and they don't provide context like it's better for working your core, or it's better for entertaining you, or it's better for handling heavy loads, you gotta understand they're just struggling with the context and nuance, or they're just out of their mind. I don't know what to tell you. But that was all they, and again, they got into this whole head position thing again. Head position is about comfort. It's about you being able to do the exercise as correct as possible. If you're not doing wacky, exorbitant movements, that makes no sense, exaggerated movements, then you're good. Anything else I want to talk about? I see a lot of people doing this exercise who really don't belong on this exercise. And again, if you're at a home gym and you don't have access to anything but the bench and the dumbbells, okay, you're stuck with it. Work on those thoracic rotation drills. That'll let you get a little more extension through that upper back. If your back's a little rounded, it's not the end of the world. I talked a lot about when you're going through that range of motion, don't let the shoulders shrug up either here or because you pull. It's like the bench pressing, right? You gotta have a clean neck. Don't bring the arm down so far that your shoulder shrugs up. Or if you do bring it down far, don't let your shoulders shrug up. And likewise, when your elbow drives up, don't drive it up so far up, you shrug up also. And I'd say the other thing too is that a lot of people, they can't maintain really good spine position on this, and that's why their back hurts. So if you don't possess the ability to do this under control without bending your elbows and your neck and everything else, you probably don't have the core control to do this exercise properly. Now, one other thing someone had asked me about this exercise is, what exactly is the correct position of the lower back? Now, as I commented with the Jeff Cavaliere video, having an arched back will help you have an arched lower back, will help you have an arched upper back. The problem is some people are intolerant to those arched back positions, known as extension intolerance. So for those clients, a lot of times what I have them do is I have them tighten their abs first, and then try to lift their chest on a base of tightened abs. Likewise, if you're someone like me, I have more of intolerance to flexion. So when I do exercise, I'm actually more comfortable creating the arch first and then tightening my abs on top of that. That comes as a matter of personal preference and personal injury history and what you're more comfortable with. Again, so I tend to do better arching, tighten my abs on top of it, whereas I have clients who are very intolerant to this extension position, so they do better slightly rounded and then lifting their chest on top of that. So arch, tighten abs, or round, tighten abs and lift chest. If you're not that good at this, then all you have access with the dumbbell, in addition to doing your thoracic rotation exercises twice a day for 6 to 10 reps for about a month, you can help yourself by doing things like yoga, cat camels, right? So whatever they call cat camel, freaking E-I-E-I-O, right? So just practicing this so you develop that type of lumbar and spine control. There's more regressed versions if that's too hard for someone where you lie on your back and you do pelvic tilts. The bottom line is that lumbar position, like the neck, you have some freedom with it. It doesn't have to be a set position, especially if you have certain intolerances to certain spinal positions. You always got to bias the exercise to you. And I guess that's how I'm going to finish this out is this a good exercise? Well, it depends on who you're training. Right? If you have adequate rotation through your upper back, if you have good core control, this exercise can be great, especially since most people have access to a dumbbell and a bench. But like anything, remember the 3 rules of exercise aren't pick single arm dumbbell rows, pick barbell squats, pick this, pick that. The 3 rules of exercise, as quoted through Ryan McDonald, are, does the exercise work the targeted muscle? Does the exercise not hurt you? That could have been said smoothly, but whatever, I've been talking for too damn long. And can you progressively overload the exercise over time? If the exercise can do those 3 things, and your goal is simply to build a little muscle, be functionally independent for as long as possible, and be harder to kill, then the exercise is good. If you can't do that, you need to find other exercises that allow you to do that, and figure out exercises like the thoracic rotation and all the core drills that will let you modify the position so you can do it and follow those circles. And again, as far as the arm position, whether you are here with your hand on the ball, or your knee on the ball, or your hand on the bench on the tripod, none of these are better variations. They're all just trade-offs of the same theme, which is a back exercise. This is arm extension, right? Arm extension doesn't change on any of these 3 exercises or 3 variations. So they're all going to work your back if done correctly. It's just how they stress other things. I have a client who loves doing funky, cool core exercise. She's got great base strength, right? So she can do decent weight if I want her to do 200 incline bench and a single arm dumbbell row. But her goal just isn't to be a big, muscular, powerful beefcake. So we do a lot more of these core variations where one hand and one knee are on the ball. We put a hand on the bench and do the rows that way, because we're purposely biasing the core in that exercise. Now, if she said to me, Shank, I want to be jacked, it'd probably be the dumbest thing in the world for me to have her doing her rows kneeling on a ball or have her hand on the ball. Because again, it's lessening the stability and the balance and the base support, therefore she can't handle as heavy of a load. So again, that is the Shank. Why am I saying so again? That is my Shank tank on the Shark Tank. That is my Shank take on the single arm dumbbell row. When I'm eating dinner, I'll get you all the links to all the videos I quoted. You can watch them for yourself. But that's it. I'm going to go eat dinner. I'll talk to you later. Bye.